Now that we've learned how to make decisions in our application using if statements, I'd like to talk about loops, and we're going to start with the while loop. What is a loop? A loop is a statement or series of statements that we want to repeat some number of times. Sometimes it could be 0, sometimes it might be several hundred. It depends on the application. A real-life example of looping could be scrubbing a dirty dish until it gets clean. We're going to continue scrubbing and checking the state of the dish, and if the dish is not clean, we're going to keep scrubbing until it's done. Generally, a loop is going to run until some condition is met, so we're still going to use booleans. The while loop is the most basic of the loops. To use a while loop, we're going to set up a test expression, just like the if statement, that's going to be evaluated before the loop starts. The loop will execute only if the expression evaluates to true. This is very important. It will continue to execute until that expression becomes false. So here's a code example. I have an integer x, which I've initialized to the value of 1. And I'm going to say while x is less than 4, 1 is less than 4. So it's going to drop into the loop's code block. And it's going to say console write line x, and then it's going to print out the value of x. So it's going to say x1. The next statement, x++, will add 1 to the value of x. So x will now be 2. When it reaches the bottom of the code block, it will return to the top of the while loop, and it will check the expression again. Is 2 less than 4? Yes. So it will print x2. It'll add 1. Go back to the top of the loop. X is now 3. Is 3 less than 4? Yes. Again, print the value of x, add 1 to the value of x. Now x is 4. Is 4 less than 4? No, that is false. 4 is equal to 4. It will then skip the code block and go to the next line, which writes out to the console, done with loop. And here's a little screenshot of that program in action. And you can see it kept adding 1 to x until the condition in the while loop became false, and then it dropped out. We always have to be careful with loops like the while loop that the test expression will change at some point. If we forgot the x++ statement, the loop would run forever because x would always be 1. Eventually your program would crash. That situation is called an infinite loop. The do-while loop is very similar to the while loop, except unlike the while loop, the do loop evaluates at the bottom, so it's always guaranteed to execute at least one time. This is different than the while loop where the expression is at the top. If the expression starts out as false, the while loop will never execute. A do-while loop will always execute at least once, even if the test condition starts as false. And here's a coding sample of it. We're going to start out with int x equals 5, and we're going to say do write the value of x to the console, 5, then add 1, x becomes 6, while x is less than 4. 6 is not less than 4, so it will immediately exit the loop and print done with loop. So the only thing that will print will be 5 and then done with loop. A good example of when to use a do-while loop is a menu. Oftentimes we want to show a menu in the console at least once and only exit the application if the user inputs the quit option.